Congressman Jodey Arrington from Texas's 19th District, thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be with you.
So for starters, can you tell us a little bit about your district and the kinds of agriculture we might find in it?
Sure. Well, you're going to find a lot of ag because agriculture is the lifeblood of West Texas. It's an economic driver, and I think it's very diversified. Cotton is the cash crop for us in terms of row crops, and we actually have the largest contiguous cotton patch in the world. So that'd be the lead on our row crops, but we also have corn and wheat and sorghum. You know, our district covers 29 counties, so you've got just about every row crop covered. We do a lot of peanuts on the western side of the district, and more sorghum on the eastern side. So livestock, you got feedlots, you've got cattle feeders, you've got cattle raisers, and then we have a lot of dairymen that have migrated over the years to West Texas because land is cheap and it's just a great quality of life, I guess, in West Texas. What can I say? So that's I think a pretty good snapshot of our ag profile in West Texas.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the district's ag profile, and one of the committees that you serve on here in Congress is the House Agriculture Committee. Wondering, throughout your time in the 115th Congress on that committee, what are some things that you hope to accomplish?
Well, I feel extremely blessed to come in at a time like this where you have, number one, Republican unified leadership. So I think that's good. If you're a Republican, I think agriculture has traditionally been and should be more bipartisan than many issues, and I'm excited by that. And I was committed to bipartisan work and relationship development, and so that'll be exciting. The other is that you've got a farm bill that happens every 4 or 5 years, and we're opening the farm bill up in my first term. So I'm now 3 months into service on the committee and as a representative of West Texas here in our nation's capital, and we're already rolling up our sleeves and going to work on a farm bill. I think that probably will have the greatest impact. I mean, I think regulatory reform in general and some of these, rolling back some of these burdensome regulations and then in some cases just unconstitutional, like Waters of the U.S., I think that whole regulatory reform is important. I think tax relief for all citizens, individuals, families, and businesses is important. But a farm bill, again, every 4 or 5 years that happens, we got to get this one right because we've had a serious downturn. We've had the largest decrease in farm income since the Great Depression over the last 3 years. So lots on the line, especially for our cotton farmers who were taken out of the Farm Bill in 2014, and it's been disastrous for them. It's also had a ripple effect into other growers, like our peanut growers. So I think that's probably the biggest opportunity, and it doesn't come very often. And I get to work with a fellow West Texan and Chairman Mike Conaway. I'm looking forward to all that.
Mm-hmm. And with Chairman Mike Conaway being just south of your district, with some of the commodities that are in your two districts' portfolios, maybe not being some of the commodities that are traditionally thought of when people think of a farm bill, how do you plan to advocate for things like cotton and sorghum and other kinds of products that are grown heavily in West Texas, but maybe not quite as heavily in the rest of the country?
Well, the cotton issue, it's I think, for one, most commodities look at that and say, but for the grace of God, go the rest of us. I mean, what would happen if we didn't have a safety net? And I've got plenty of Republicans who, tell me that they're pro-free market, therefore they're not for ag subsidies. And I remind them that this is a global market, and you've got, for example, with cotton, China mass subsidizing their cotton farmers, and they obviously have a history of currency manipulation. They've also done dumping with respect to cotton. They've got all kinds of ways that they can disrupt the market such that it puts American producers at a disadvantage. A year ago, we had China cotton producers selling their cotton for $1.20, and ours were selling about 60 cents. Huge discrepancy. And I think you could argue that because of our tax burden, our labor laws, our tax cost, and just the cost to produce, just the input cost of fertilizers and tractors, it costs more to produce in this country, and we have to have a safety net to help somewhat equalize the playing field. Or at least when we can't compete on account of an uneven playing field, you've got some mechanism to let our producers live to fight another day. So I think everybody notices the disaster of pulling a commodity out of the Farm Bill and letting WTO and other countries dictate the terms to us. It was a mistake. In terms of promoting other commodity groups, I think you've got enough regional activity among commodities that we represent, or that in West Texas, that I think there's a critical mass. The other thing is, a farm bill is tough to accomplish, so you got to get everybody holding hands and in somewhat agreement. I think Mike Conaway's already done a great job. I get a sense that so far people are of one accord, and they know that, you know, if everybody doesn't feel like there's equitable treatment, then you won't get a farm bill, and that's going to hurt everybody. So I think those dynamics that exist are helpful for me to be able to promote the commodity groups that exist in West Texas.
Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about agriculture and agriculture committee, but I'm wondering, what are some things that you're hoping to accomplish, or some goals that you have for your other two committees, that being budget and Veterans Affairs?
Well, one thing I want my ag producers to know and appreciate is that we can get a farm bill and farm policy perfect if there was such a thing. I think some of my friends think there is such a thing as perfect legislation, and I won't wait on perfect, and I won't let perfect be the enemy of good. But if we could get it perfect, if you don't have resources, it doesn't matter. So you have to have resources coupled with the policy to make the difference that we all hope to make for agriculture. So I'm fortunate to be the only Republican from Texas on the Budget Committee, and I just got out of a Budget Committee meeting just 30 minutes before I did this interview with you, and my last comments were about agriculture and making sure that we don't think somehow in our minds, when we're $20 trillion in debt, major problem in our country. The fiscal condition is I think the biggest challenge for the future of our country and our children and grandchildren. So I'm not diminishing that. I'm actually affirming that is in fact true. But my message is, you're not going to balance a budget on these little costs like 0.26 of 1%, which is the expenditure for ag programs in the federal government. 0.26 of 1% of the federal budget are monies that go to support our farmers and ranchers. And what we need to look at are those expenditure items that are driving the debt. 70% of our debt is in entitlement programs, but of the big entitlement programs, you've got Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and so we've got to be able to have the courage to take on these big issues, or we're going to continue to cut to the bone on programs and in areas that I think really will hurt our country, like infrastructure and like agriculture. So I think this is going to be, I think that's a place where I can also be an advocate for agriculture. And in fact, I think, we have been, and so I think it's a good strategy. Be on the Ag Committee, be on the budget, get the policy, get the resources right, and that therefore you can make a difference. Veterans is a whole nother deal. It's we have 40,000 veterans in West Texas, and I think all of us as Americans appreciate and feel indebted to our men and women who served in the armed forces and were willing to risk their lives for us. And I didn't serve in the military, so this is my way of being able to serve those who did serve, And we've got big plans on reforming the VA and doing some other things to reform some of these programs that we think are not working to serve the veterans. So we're not making good on our promise, and that's offensive to me and to most Americans, just how poorly we are serving them. So we've got a lot of work to do over there, and I couldn't be more honored to have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Before your time in Congress, part of your job history involves working for then Governor and President George W. Bush in various roles. Wondering, throughout your time with him in both Texas and Washington, what are some things that you learned from working with former President Bush?
Well, I watched him in my early part of my career when he was governor. We had a Democrat lieutenant governor, Bob Bullock, and a Democrat Speaker of the House, and Pete Laney. They met every week for breakfast. I watched as they worked in a bipartisan way, and in a way that demonstrated to every Texan that they were putting the state's interest first, and then they would work collectively towards those towards the goal of bettering our state. I'm sure there was give and take in that, but you just saw, you saw a unified position to tackle education, criminal justice, and it made an impression on me. I mean, I didn't see the stark lines between Democrat and Republican like I have in Washington. And I think that's a credit to the president's leadership. It's a credit to the other guys too, but I guess there was also necessity because you had both leaders of the two houses in the Democrat Party. But I think that was just his heart. I think he wishes, and I think his greatest regret is that he couldn't have that bipartisan relationship here in Washington like he enjoyed in Texas. I think the other thing is just the courage. He was a guy that did what he believed was right, and he was, even if it weren't popular at the time. People get really weary of sending people into harm's way post 9/11 and the conflicts in the Middle East, Afghanistan, and then Iraq. And I think he just believed with all of his heart that if we didn't bring the fight to the terrorists and to those who harbor terrorism, that they would bring it back to our homeland. And he wasn't willing to take that risk, even though he was criticized constantly. He was a man of great courage and conviction, and I think that's a principle in leadership. Is you listen to people, you get the data, and then you do what you believe is right. And I think he said, I'd rather history judge my leadership and the decisions I made than the political pundits of the day, because they just the wind blows and the waves toss about, but I think he was rock solid on his convictions, and I think most people respect that.
Congressman, I'll wrap up with this one. I'm wondering, throughout the process of your campaigning, maybe talking with your now constituents through town halls, things like that, what's something that a West Texan has said to you that has stuck with you the most?
It was a farmer in Hale County at the, actually my hometown is in Hale County, Plainview, Texas. And the sentiment expressed to me, question, comment that stuck with me the most from my experience campaigning for over a year and a half in 29 counties in West Texas was a farmer in Hale County who was part of a Farm Bureau group where I was meeting, listening, and they were vetting me as a candidate. And we were going around the room, and farmers were asking questions about the Stacks program and how we're going to get cotton back in the Farm Bill, ARC versus PLC in terms of commodity coverage, price loss coverage, et cetera. And I was learning a lot of these issues, so I wasn't an expert on any of them. But one farmer just looked me square in the face and said, "Son, do you love agriculture?" So he dispensed with this notion of, does this guy have all the policy issues? Does he have command over them? I think it's reasonable to expect that you would be asked about your position on things. But what that man wanted to know more than anything was, am I passionate about his industry and his livelihood and the lifeblood of our economy, and beyond lifeblood of our economy, our identity as West Texans. I think he saw a lot at stake. I think he wanted to know that somebody was going to get up every day and fight for the farmer, and be a strong voice, unwavering voice for agriculture. That's what he was really asking, and I was happy to oblige him. I thought that was I said, you asked the best question of the entire campaign. And, you know, I grew up in a farming community. My dad was in the agriculture business for over 40 years. We didn't eat. We didn't have a roof over our heads. I didn't have clothes on my backs if it weren't for the farmers paying my dad as he sold tractors and farm equipment. I went on to work for President Bush, and fortunately, I got to advise him on putting his agriculture team together. I advised him as governor on agriculture boards and commissions. And then I came back to Texas Tech and worked on agriculture research and technology development. Ag has always been a part of my life. It is who I am. It's where I'm from, and it's a great honor to now take all those experiences and my passion for agriculture and be able to fight to ensure the policies that are being passed through legislation in Washington are promoting and defending this industry that not only makes West Texas great, it makes America great.
Congressman Jodey Arrington from the state of Texas, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.